Welcome back to Mind Your Biz. My name is Seth, and today I want to tell you really briefly about the Whitehouse Factsheet. Let's dig into this. And welcome back to the channel. According to my analytics, a great percentage of you are not subscribed. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and click the bell icon so you're notified when new media like this comes out. Let me show you the thing. We'll jump right in. The fact sheet from the White House, and they actually have a dark mode, so I guess the government is doing something right, but this otherwise is not one of them. The fact sheet itself. It is a comprehensive framework for responsible development of digital assets. And remember that every time that the U.S. government says responsible, what they mean is restrictive, and framework, what they mean is future laws and taxes. So that's all they can do. That's all they are designed to do, is create those types of things. They are not designed to come to your house and like mow your lawn or assist you in finding better employment. That's not really how they do, or assist you in deciding to actually get better skills to increase your earning potential. They're designed to do other things. But here's what they've got. And I've got something of a system of sort of red, yellow, and green flags all throughout this document. I wish I could just export this and send you my notes, but in lieu of that, we're going to scroll through. I'm going to give you a couple of high-level bullet points that I think are important and that I really want you to focus on. And then, spoiler alert, at the end, without giving you financial advice, I do want you to reach out to your elected officials, senators and congresspeople, and be vocal about your thoughts and opinions on the matter. Your voice counts, especially if you're in the United States. If you're not in the United States, I want you to reach out to your friends across the pond who do live in the United States and help your friends who maybe are not totally convinced of how cryptocurrency can work or should work. Please talk to them, reason through this document with them, and help them come to a better understanding. Don't hit them over the head. Don't bang them over the head with your ideas and with the real facts, because they won't listen. But do try to engage them in a conversation that helps win hearts and minds. We need people becoming vocal about this, and that requires understanding. So let's jump right in. The digital assets market has grown significantly in recent years, with millions of people globally, I think that's a good thing, including 16% of adult Americans, purchasing digital assets, which reached a market cap of $3 trillion globally in November of 2021. They represent potential opportunities to reinforce U.S. leadership in the global financial system. And I agree with these statements largely, and I think they're green flags. I think it's great that we've seen massive adoption, and I think there really is an opportunity for the U.S. to become a global leader if we prevent them from doing what they normally do when they try to over-regulate things, which is F everything up, right? So let's talk about that a little more in depth. There was an executive order by President Biden on March 9th, and this is these are the key points that are gone over in this document. Consumer and investor protection. I view that as a red flag because consumer and investor protection leads to things such as being a qualified investor. Most people who are retail investors right now are prevented from getting their hands on some of the best and finest investments and highest yielding investments because they don't have the investor status that the U.S. government views as necessary to be permitted to invest. So the highest risk but highest reward investments, they are barred from investing in. They are, however, permitted to go to Las Vegas, gamble away their everything they own, including liens on their home and on their personal possessions. So that's permitted, but retail investors are not permitted to go and make speculative investments on high risk but high reward stocks. And that's where I think they're headed here as well. That's why I view it as a red flag. So now, maybe you're starting to understand my worldview on this document, so I won't go through this too much more, but that's why that's a red flag to me. Promoting financial stability, that's a yellow flag to me, or orange, I guess-ish. And why would that be not a red flag but not a green flag? Well, that sounds good, right? Financial stability sounds good, but you can do that through education. And then, of course, you can do that through your own frameworks and say not printing trillions upon trillions of US dollars to debase your own currency. This is something that doesn't require a blockchain, right? If I were reading a pitch deck from a crypto project, I would say, is financial stability really your job? Does blockchain really fix this? And in answer to the U.S. government, no, blockchain doesn't really fix financial stability. You guys if you just stop hitting the print button on the US dollar, that might help. So different way to get there. Countering illicit finance. Now, I get it. This is kind of their job, but is it the job of cryptocurrency and the crypto ecosystem to stop crime from ever existing again? Well, obviously not. The US dollar, especially in cash, but also in wire transfer and in the regular old banking system, and this is provable by the billions upon billions of dollars, the US dollar is the most used currency in all of crime, in all of history, for all of mankind. Like, this is not something you can dispute. This is a fact. So countering illicit finance, again, we might want to look into that with our current systems of ACH, wire transfer. Talk to a real estate agent that you may know. Ask them about wire fraud in settling the title and loan of new homes. Every real estate agent that you can talk to, I promise, can tell you a story about how wire fraud happens regularly just in trying to buy real estate. And that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency at all. So really, illicit activity? Wouldn't we be worried about all the theft that's happening with our US dollars? Then US leadership in the global financial system and economic competitiveness. Again, I think that's very bullish, a great green flag, if they mean it. But is it lip service? Might be. Financial inclusion, again, might not be their job. And cryptocurrency, blockchain systems, they are colorblind, gender blind, sex blind, sexual preference and orientation blind. They are blind to age. They are blind to geography. They are blind to political ideology and to religious creed. Cryptocurrency doesn't care who you are, what your skin color is, who you married, who you want to marry, who you slept with, and who you voted for. It's totally neutral. The same cannot be said of the financial system, the legacy financial system. And we saw that in Canada when people who chose to express themselves a certain way had their accounts shut down. So how is it again that the government can help make this more inclusive? Because I don't see it. And then last but not least, responsible innovation. I don't know why it would be the public sector's job to ensure that the private sector is innovating and being responsible about it. Most of the time, free markets decide that. I think you would agree with me that if fewer children drowned in pools at home, it would be a better place, a better world with fewer children dying by drowning at home, in their own homes, in their pool. But we haven't really done much to improve pool cover tech over the last 20 years in, say, the same way that we have with fuel efficiency in cars or with horsepower and speed in cars. So which one is the greater priority? Which one results in more loss of life or more responsibility? I don't know that I have the full numbers there, but I do know that people like to go fast in their cars. So we paid for that, and the market has developed that. I don't know that the U.S. government has really played all that big a role in it, but we'll see. So in those areas, they want to do a deep dive. Protecting consumers, investors, and businesses. They say almost a quarter of digital coin offerings had disclosure or transparency problems like plagiarized documents or false promises of guaranteed returns. And I can attest to this. Working in the crypto industry as a consultant, full-time consultant, I can definitely say I've done my fair share of risk assessment readings and background checks and looking through various other teams. And you've seen me publicly interview on Mind Your Biz, on the Mind Your Biz Classic channel. You've seen me publicly interview all kinds of developers from all walks of life, from all areas of the world on all sorts of projects. And there can be some problems, but usually the ones who are serious go through the extra work to ensure that their projects are done well. So they're not wrong here, but at the same time, there are consumer protection organizations and there are consumer protection groups that are not government funded who do a better job than the government at vetting these types of things, right? When it comes to other industries, we have the Better Business Bureau, which is, I know it's a government organization, government sponsored, but we also have Google reviews, and we have why can't I think of the name? We have the review sites, right? You have public reviews on various other platforms that are run in the private sector. That's my point, is that you have public reviews by individuals like each other, like you and me, that help protect other consumers from bad service. So yeah, they're trying to get the CFTC and the SEC to aggressively pursue investigations and enforcement actions. I think that, to jump back to the beginning of this document, I think that will stifle U.S. leadership in the global financial system. And I think that will stifle economic competitiveness for the U.S. dollar over time. And I think we're already starting to see that express itself in other countries choosing to be maybe not de-dollarized, but to move away from the dollar and accept other forms of currency in much the same way that El Salvador has, and now with sanctions in Eastern Europe and problems in Eastern Europe, we can see some countries that they're no longer permitted to participate with the U.S. dollar, and they're still running. So this is not a good look from the U.S. to say that we don't want to allow ourselves to become competitive, because there are several other groups in the world that are saying that's fine. We don't want to compete on your terms. So I think if we're too restrictive here, we will see some of the best and the brightest leave the United States and go to other places to innovate. And I think that's already happening in the crypto ecosystem. Leave me a comment if you can think of an example of a company that is either trying to leave the United States or has left the United States based on this issue already. But yeah, moving on, the agencies are encouraged to issue guidance and address current and emergent risks, and that I've got a green and a yellow flag on. I think it is important for the SEC and the CFTC to be very clear about what it is that they expect, and especially important for the IRS to be very clear and publish the specifics of what they expect before anyone can be expected to comply. Right? What does compliance mean if there are no rules, if there are no guidelines? How can anyone comply? So issuing that guidance is essential. And for as long as we have guys like Gary Gensler being on stand with the Senate, unable to answer basic questions about decentralization versus centralization versus whether or not something is considered a security, well, then we won't know what is a security and what isn't a security. But going down the list, promoting access to safe, affordable financial services, I think I have an issue with that. If the traditional finance system leaves too many people behind, I don't know what to tell you. There are plenty of systems such as debit cards that do not require a background check, that do not leave people out of the system, that do not require credit worthiness. They just require a deposit, and that's it. So the same is true of cryptocurrency. You can just start right now. There's no permission required, and it doesn't require additional government intervention. So I don't believe that that's true. They are trying to promote the use of FedNow, the current instant payment system that's been put forward by the Fed. I just don't think that it's going to be all it's cracked up to be, and I don't think that it solves that many real world problems. They are trying to get additional organizations to fund research and development, which may be helpful, but I don't know. Fostering financial stability. The instability of groups like Terra Luna, yes, that is an issue, but I don't know that it's the U.S. government's job to fix that issue, in much the same way that it was not the U.S. government's job to pull Beanie Babies off of shelves or to prevent the .com era from ever happening by shutting down the World Wide Web. Right? The U.S. government can only do so much to protect us from ourselves, and so if we choose to invest in things that are speculative, that is high risk and high reward. And again, qualified investors are permitted to do that, and sometimes they get cleared out. That's part of the game. Having the responsible disclosure of risks is important, but preventing people from participating is not your job, Uncle Sam. I don't believe that it is. But yeah, moving on down, the Treasury will work with financial institutions to bolster their capacity to identify and mitigate cyber vulnerabilities. Good luck with that. I hope that works out. I do have a little bit of an issue with some of the other language that's being used here, such as the responsible innovation, moving down and saying that they will, the Office of Science and Technology will kickstart fundamental research on next-generation cryptography. What they mean is, in my mind, between the lines, backdoor crypto technology, cryptography technology. I worry so much about what's being said here. I want you to read between the lines with me, okay? So next generation cryptography, what they mean is hopefully, ideally, something that they can access via backdoors. Transaction programmability. What they want, again, is a CBDC that they can prevent from being used in very specific ways, or that they can revoke after certain conditions are met. You see the problem with programmable money? It is used as a tool against you and me by whoever is programming it, or can be. cybersecurity and privacy protections. Again, it's double speak. What they mean is security for them, not for you. Privacy for them as they see it, not for you and me. I very much doubt that what they're saying can be taken at face value. Then ways to mitigate the environmental impacts of digital assets. That is baloney. Plain and simple. That's baloney. There's so many industries that use very similar amounts of energy to blockchain. And I know I'm going to get some hate for this in the comments. Bring it on. Go ahead and bring your facts and figures too, including the diversity of energy sourcing and generation for the activities that you do. I'm going to say this instead. On Mind Your Biz, I'm a proponent of capturing stranded energy, such as methane flares, and then clean nuclear energy. It's working for France, and it has worked for France for a long time with no incidents. Why aren't there serious problems in France? Well, because they have nuclear facilities built in areas that don't have natural disasters. So again, my concern here is that this merely is a narrative that allows for the government to issue more rules and regulations. It's just anti-competitive, like every other industry. If you don't like your competitors and you have friends on Capitol Hill, you get them to pass legislation that makes things hard for your friends but easier for you. So who's really benefiting from this? The people who would run proof-of-stake systems and who want centralized digital currencies like a CBDC. So methods of informing, educating, and training diverse groups. Sure, that's marginally useful. It's okay. But let's go on down the list. Department of Commerce will examine establishing a standing forum between federal agencies, industry and academics, and civil society. I don't know who's going to be in each of these groups, but having real industry leaders who actually know what they're talking about help to create new policy, I think sounds good. It's just that's one of the four groups. Academics, generally speaking, don't tend to really have real world experience, and civil society, depending on who you're pulling that person from, if they have zero experience or exposure to digital assets, might not know how to give a good and informed bit of feedback. And of course, federal agencies do what they've always done. They try to increase the tax base, and they try to create all kinds of invisible lines and red tape. So I don't know that I care for them to be part of that forum. But there you go. Moving on down the list, fighting illicit finance. This is one that was particularly disturbing to me because it's a narrative that has continued. It's persisted across various bull markets in crypto, and that is that there's somehow problems, right? It's used in crime. They say that digital assets, some of which are pseudonymous and can be transferred without a financial intermediary, have been exploited by bad actors to launder illicit proceeds to finance terrorism and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, to conduct a wide array of other crimes, for example, ransomware, narcotic sales, money laundering, funding of activities of rogue regimes, and thefts by the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the affiliated, they're a Lazarus group. It's out in North Korea. They went out and they went crazy with the boogeyman talk here. The reality is that the thefts from these groups in cryptocurrencies pale in comparison to organized crime here domestically in the United States, let alone the drug trade, which is fueled by the US dollar and is fueled by bad domestic economy or domestic policy here in the United States. So there are ways for us to decrease the financial number of the damage just by passing better laws here as they relate to nonviolent crimes here in the United States. So, but we want to point the finger at the big bad Korean boogeyman, right? The Lazarus Group, and it's named here in this document, which makes me very upset. The president wants to call on the Congress to amend the Bank Secrecy Act, anti-tip-off statutes, and laws against unlicensed money transmitting to apply explicitly to digital asset service providers, meaning that they want to regulate exchanges in the same way that they regulate banks. There's a lot in this document, so much more in this document that is really disturbing, but let me jump to the bottom line. And that is that they tell us outright what they want all of this to lead to. They give us all these problems, right? Financial inclusion, danger, right? Illicit activities, the bad North Koreans. People can get wrecked if they don't pay attention to what they're investing in, right? There's real risks of losing all of your holdings. What could be the solution to this problem? Well, I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with CBDC. A digital form of the US dollar has the potential to offer significant benefits. A potential benefit could be preserve US global financial leadership and support the effectiveness of sanctions, but also support the effectiveness of legal action against anybody, potentially even without a warrant. We don't know. We don't know who will control the programmability of a CBDC. It could be controlled at the state level, could be controlled at the federal level. There could be various points of control, which would then create a tax surface for bad actors to control it. Could be that you have your ex works at a certain financial office at the county level or at the state level, and they're just having a bad day, and they want to make sure that you're having a bad day, so they shut down your accounts for an afternoon or for the weekend, or they prevent you from being able to pay your power bill so the lights go off, right? There's any number of things that can happen depending on how they choose to architect this and whether or not they choose to put in a lot of control access points. CBDC could also have unintended consequences, including runs to CBDC in times of stress. This I view as a green flag, because I would like very much for the U.S. government to see that if they issue a specific amount of supply in dollars, that people may want to be misers. They may want to put those CBDCs or those digital dollars into their hardware wallets and use them like cash under the mattress. And that would be, in my mind, poetic justice if it can be private enough and give people enough flexibility. If it's genuinely that flexible and that sovereign for people to just hold on their own, it would be very healthy for the U.S. government to see just how inclined people are not to use central holders or custodial services, but to just hold things on a hardware wallet. More people than they realize would be willing to do that in the same way that we hold cash. But CBDC is their bottom line. Let me end with this, not my words, but the words of the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. So here's what he has to say about it.
I'm pretty skeptical. I keep asking anybody at the Fed or outside of the Fed to explain to me what problem this is solving. I can send anybody in this room $5 with Venmo right now. Right? No, seriously. So what is it that a CBDC could do that Venmo can't do? And all I get is a bunch of hand waving. I get a bunch, well, maybe it's better for financial inclusion. Maybe it's better for cross-border remittances. Maybe. Is there any evidence that it is? And, they say, well, what about China? China is doing it. Well, I can see why China would do it. If they want to monitor every one of your transactions, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. If you want to impose negative interest rates, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. And if you want to directly tax customer accounts, you could do that with the central bank digital currency. You can't do that with Venmo. So I get why China would be interested. Why would the American people be for that? Because I'm pretty skeptical.
And I think that's exactly the question that I want to end today's video on. Why would the American people be for that? Please join me in reaching out to your elected officials, senators, and congresspeople. Expect a follow-up video from Mind Your Biz where I talk to you about some sort of sample language that I'm going to be using to reach out to my elected officials where I live. And I strongly encourage you, don't just take my word for it and don't just take my opinion, but do be vocal about this issue. And if you live across the pond, you don't live in the United States, do open this conversation with your friends who live in the United States. Help us to win hearts and minds and help us to work, now, as early as possible, to get the leadership of the United States on board with fostering real innovation here, helping the United States to become a real leader in digital currencies and not to become, the Empire from Star Wars. All right, guys, remember, you're the reason to make this media. I love your face. Stay private and mind your biz.